One, two, three. What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of True Crime and Cocktails. We're so glad that you're here. As always, I am your host, Lauren Ash, and as always, I am joined by my co-hostess with the most S, Christy Oxborrow. How you feeling? Fantastic.
Jazzed.
I'm also jazzed.
Hey. Oh, I
I'm
like when
also
we're both
jazzed.
jazzed.
Yeah. Didn't we once say when we're both jazzed, we're jizzed? It doesn't matter. I
I
can't.
have a feeling
I
that has
I
been
think
said.
we said that, but I didn't need to say it in the first 30 seconds of an episode. We don't have to bring out the jizz word, but here we are.
Well, jizz, there it's been 3 times now.
That is definitely a record for us, folks. This is a
You're right.
historic episode of the show already, if nothing
Yeah.
else. Um, oh gosh, what a joke. If you hear my fan, it's because I'm at my place in Toronto, and if you've listened to this show for any amount of time, you know my struggle in this apartment. The building does not turn on the cold air, the AC, until mid to late May.
That's insane.
It's currently 26 degrees Celsius, which is 79 degrees Fahrenheit. It's too hot.
That's unlivable.
It's very hot. It's very, very hot. It's too much.
That's way too much. I couldn't handle it. I need like a low level, like chill at all times. Like,
Look, I have Easter chocolate Mother Laurel gave me. I took a foil off today and I bit in and I was like, this is melted. Like it's just sitting in my kitchen on the counter, not beside a heat source. And
mm,
yeah, melted because it's just that warm in here.
that's insane.
I mean, it wasn't a puddle, but you know what I mean? It was very
Of
soft.
course.
It was very, very
Oh,
soft.
sure.
Anyway,
And the
I mean,
taste
listen,
changes once it gets melty.
thank you for saying that. That's exactly what I'm getting at. And I don't hate it. I don't
Sure.
hate it, but it does change it.
It does.
Yeah.
Because I find there are certain ones that I'm sure all of them happen, but once you've like, if you've put certain chocolate in like a cookie and you bake it, it tastes different once it's melted. Like an M&M melted in the oven in a cookie tastes different than an M&M just pop it in your mouth.
I'm going to say something here, and I know I'm going to lose friends. I'm going to lose people's goodwill. And you know what?
Oh,
I have to
okay.
own it.
Okay.
My name is Lauren Ash,
Hmm.
and I think semi-sweet chips can kick rocks. All I ever want is a milk chocolate chip.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
Semi-sweet, to quote Christy Oxborrow, get fucked.
Thank you so
I'm not interested. Will I
Yep.
eat one? Of course I will. But for example, an oatmeal chocolate chip cookie, semi-sweet, it's fine. A milk chocolate chip in there? I'd be willing to like walk into traffic for that. You know what I'm saying?
Sure. I don't even
So,
know that oatmeal cookies get a lot of love, to be honest.
oh, I love an oatmeal chocolate chip. I'd go to the ends of the earth for those.
Hey, why
Yeah.
not?
Why not? Um, but
Also,
I also
don't
want it.
know that people are going to come for you about not liking semi-sweet.
Everybody,
I
it's
know
all,
it's a classic baking tool. I know
it
that.
is.
But I mean, there's a time and a place.
I've been trying to force myself to like dark chocolate for years.
Oh,
And
dark chocolate, I can't get out.
will I choke it down? Of course I will. Absolutely. I don't love it. And okay, here's the thing that people come for me about.
Hmm.
I think if you love dark chocolate, you're kidding yourself. I think you've trained yourself to like it. And there's, by the way, no shame in that game. I trained myself to like olives. I don't throw any stones from this glass house. Apparently, well, I'm throwing pebbles. I may not be throwing full rocks.
Okay, couple of things.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, if you love dark chocolate, I love that for you. I feel that dark chocolate is the devil,
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
not in a fun way.
Yeah.
Not in like
Not in
the
a
devil,
fun way.
not the devil's here, we're here to party. I don't think anyone's ever said that.
The devil's here. We're here to party. That's gonna be the name of your like electronic house music hit. The devil is here and we're here to party.
This writes itself. I was just
right?
going to start like twirling around some glow sticks. I don't have any on hand. Well, I actually think I have some in the bedroom, but
In the bedroom.
no, I know. I hate how that sounded. No, I have a closet in the bedroom that's like where I put gifts and things I buy that I plan to like give at some point, and that's where the glow sticks go. There's also school supplies in that closet. So
Sure,
again,
sure, sure.
I'm trying to quote Justin Timberlake, I'm trying to take the sexy back, if you know what I mean. And by that, I just mean, take that out of the bedroom. I didn't mean it like that. Oh God. Yeah, dark chocolate. No, not my style. Also, can I ask
Yeah,
why you chose to force yourself to like olives?
because they stand for everything I'm pro. They're salty.
Mhm.
You can stuff them with blue cheese. That's also controversial. And I know it doesn't make sense because I feel like a lot of people who like dark chocolate also like things like olives and blue cheese. And blue
Sure.
cheese is probably one of the most polarizing. And I'm sure that people are going to come for me and say, whatever, lady, you don't like dark chocolate? Well, you're a fool. Your taste buds are fucked with you liking blue cheese. But I don't know. I do like a briny, salty. I love pickles is the thing. And
Me
let's be
too.
honest, olives, whether we like it or not, they're the upscale cousin of a pickle.
They're pickle adjacent.
They're pickle adjacent, and I'll say it. I think they're more cosmopolitan. I think they're more well traveled. I think they've probably read a little bit more. And that's no shade to pickles. But I'm just saying, I think, especially, a stuffed olive.
So pickles, community college. Olives, studied abroad. Is
Yes,
that was what we're
yes,
saying? Got it. Got it.
absolutely.
Um, I
Yeah,
mean,
pickles, tradespeople, very important. Very important.
backbone of the community.
Backbone of the community. Olives write about their feelings. You know what I mean?
Oh, Olive's journal for sure.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Daily journalers.
100%. Okay. Okay. I mean, look, I hope nobody comes for anybody just because they don't like the same food. We're just saying like we don't like a certain thing.
Well,
If you like it, great.
in their
Um,
defense, I did start this by coming for people. I did start this, so I
you
own
came in
it.
a little hot.
I
Yeah.
came in hot.
Yeah. But I
But
mean, you
but
should be
in my
allowed to
defense,
like what
I'm
you don't or
physically very hot at the moment.
you are. You are. You should be
Sorry.
allowed to like or not like whatever you want.
Yeah.
Like, I don't love a pickle.
Right.
I used to eat the little bread and butter ones or like
Hmm.
the thicker, like the sweet mix ones. I used to eat those no problem. And then over the years, I just went, I've had my fill of
Hmm.
vinegar base. I'm good. And now,
I'd like,
as you know, I get my burgers without.
of course, I'd like for you to try a Bubby's. In my opinion,
Mhm.
Bubby's bread and butter pickles are the best pickles on the planet.
Well, I'm already drawn in by the name
Yeah.
because I don't know if I want to be able to have someone I call Bubby or if I
Hmm.
want to be called Bubby, but Bubby is adorable.
Yeah. Yeah.
Bubby?
Yeah.
Who's that? Oh, that's my Bubby.
Yeah, it's cute.
Bubby, adorable.
And I'll say this, I have a hard time going back to other pickles
Oh, I see.
because they're
Yeah,
quite crunchy, the Bubbies.
got
They're
it.
not mealy. You know what I mean? They're not
Yeah,
like, ugh. They really maintain a crunch.
sure,
And I love a sweet pickle. I prefer a sweet pickle to like a dill, which I know is shocking.
sure,
But if I'm going to do a dill, I may as well just do an olive. Completely different flavor, by the way, but
sure. Is there now, is there a difference between like the sweet and the more savory pickle in like the education wise? Like we had pickles, the olives are studying abroad. Are
right.
is a dill pickle more likely to like top of their class than a sweet pickle?
I think so.
Fair enough.
I think so. I think a dill pickle, all business. Sweet pickle, romantic. You know what I mean?
I just like I'm so obsessed with you. Like, I don't even know what to say. A dill pickle is all business. A sweet pickle romantic. Somehow it fucking makes sense. Like,
Do you know what I mean? It does.
yeah, it
Like a
does.
dill pickle is like a strong and silent type. Okay. It's going to take a
Yeah,
lot for him to say he loves you, but when he does, he means it.
he
A sweet
does.
pickle wants to frolic in a park, wants to read you poetry during a picnic. You know what I mean?
A sweet pickle
Is
might
like,
not call you back. He
well,
might leave you on red.
you never know. But also an intense lover. Why? Why? Didn't need to.
You
Didn't
are
need it.
throwing it back
Didn't need it.
to when we got into the whole like sexualizing characters that didn't need it, like the McDonald's
But at least they're
McDonald's land characters. And
yeah, but at least they have like sentience. At least I was sexualizing something that had a brain and agency as opposed to sexualizing a different kind of pickle.
oh, or are we kidding? Like if I like quickly off the top of my head, like a cinnamon bun is going to be tender, a little sloppy, maybe not imaginative, but it's going to be a tender lover. Um, a Dorito is going to flip me over, smack my ass, and never call me again.
Oh my God. Yeah, you're
Get
right.
into it about foods.
You're
Then
right.
there we go. Like a Cool Ranch? Fuck, they're not even going to take my call in the first place.
Oh, he's gonna give you a fake number.
He is.
Yeah.
He is. Like a classic Dorito, he's down to fuck. The Dorito
Now,
people don't want to say.
now, just to
I just
clarify,
assumed because the classic Dorito is a redhead.
well, I was going to say, what do you consider a classic Dorito? The nacho cheese,
I assumed the red bag,
the red
whatever
bag, or
the
the
red
orange
bag.
bag?
Well, the orange bag are like a I don't even know. The red bag to me is classic Dorito.
Nacho cheese.
Is that what it is? I don't know.
I think that's what you mean.
Okay, well, I'm gonna verify. Don't
Well, they
worry,
don't
people.
have the zesty cheese in the States, which is shocking. The
Got it.
zesty cheese, the orange bag is my favorite.
Yes, I meant the nacho cheese. Just as
Yeah,
soon as
yeah.
you hit Dorito, all I did was type in Dorito, and it was like, bam, these ones, and it's like, yeah, here we go.
I like to dip a nacho cheese Dorito in a queso. I like the cheese on cheese.
Oh, sure. Did you know that there is a tangy golden sriracha Dorito?
I just heard about this. I feel like I've got to try it. I went so nuts on sriracha for like 6 months once. Like I was literally eating it with every meal on everything I was
Mhm,
eating. And then I was like,
mhm.
I have to stop. I'm burning a hole in my digestive tract, surely. Then somebody told me that there is something about hot sauce. There's some piece in it that is addictive. And I was like, that tracks. I don't know if it's true or false. I haven't fact checked it yet, but it made a lot of sense to me because it was a real come down for me when I stopped eating sriracha on everything. That being said, I have a feeling the gateway for me back into that hot sauce could be those Doritos.
I could see that. I could see that. I just want you to know I feel filthy for having gone after Doritos in the respect that I did. Um, I also don't know why I was, for whatever reason, comparing a cinnamon bun and a chip.
Because you were backing me up for talking about a sweet pickle being a good lover.
You're, you're right.
So,
You're right. That was the moment I was like, oh no, I'm looking through the binoculars. I can see Lauren. She's in the boat, but she doesn't have her life vest on. And I'm like, I got to toss her one of those rings. How am I going to do that? How fuckable are Doritos?
yeah. And what you did instead of tossing the ring was you dove in. You dove into the water. You're swimming to the boat.
You're right.
You put yourself at peril. And honestly, how beautiful. Um,
Yeah.
I
I
do
was
the
like,
same
if
for
she
you.
drowns, I drown. Yeah. Oh, but does it have to be so public? I don't know. Um, but speaking of public, previously on True Crime and Cocktails.
Talk to me.
Um, we talked about my fears.
Yes.
You
Have you
commented,
overcome all of them in a week?
I nope, I've added some. Um, you commented about like, God, I'd love to just sit down and write out your list. I started. So I have all the list. I have all the ones from last time, which there are 9 that I listed in the previous episode of fears. As I thought of them, wrote them down. I want you to know nothing is worse than sitting just randomly in your home thinking, what am I afraid of? And then you're like, I don't know. And then you're like, what would be the worst thing to show up at my door right now? I have a list. The dentist. Number 1.
If the dentist starts doing house calls, oh my God, we're gonna have to go into an underground bunker. That dream you
Yeah.
had about living underground is gonna have to come true.
Thank you for throwing it back. Yeah, look, I've always had a fear of the dentist, and I don't know if it's because I watched Little Shop of Horrors a lot as a child, and Steve Martin was terrifying.
Mm.
But yeah, I'm working on getting over that. Needles.
Mm.
Needles in general, as someone who will openly go get tattoos, no problem. Needles are a problem for me.
Interesting.
Yeah. Heights. Don't love heights. I don't. Um, Icy roads and sidewalks. The second that I see a sheen and I know to walk from my house to the garage, it's going to be peril. I will lock up and I will be paralyzed to get where I'm going because I can't imagine slipping on ice.
Mm.
I have slipped on ice many, many a time. And I still remember very vividly as a teen walking from the bus stop. I swear to God, I had an out of body experience because when I think of the memory, I see myself because I slipped and I was perfectly horizontal to the ground and went down so hard. It was not great. Massive waves, just a big wall of water. No, thank you.
I have a follow-up on that one.
Yeah.
Have you ever been in the ocean?
The ocean?
Yeah.
Yes. Oh, I love like anytime I've gone, I love that. Anytime, twice. Like, calm down. I went once for a destination wedding and once for my own honeymoon, to like a tropical place with an ocean. And both times I was like one of the few people who was like, I want to get in the water and just like
Interesting.
float around, but I don't go far. I go
Mm.
out just enough, like I go out maybe like tit deep
Hmm.
so
That's
that
pretty
all
far.
so that all I have to do is like lift my legs and I'm floating, living my best life.
Couple things. I'm
Yeah.
surprised if you fear waves that you'd be willing to get in the ocean because it can get quite choppy. Part two,
Yeah.
sharks, I guess, not on your list.
Somehow they're not. But also when I say wave, like if the ocean was very wavy, then I'm not getting near it.
Mm-hmm.
Anytime I've gone in, it's been like very calm
Right.
or just like the tiniest little thing. I'm talking like the kind of waves you see in an apocalyptic movie where it's like
Oh,
the waves are like 30 to 100 feet tall and you're like, here it goes.
tsunami.
We're done. We're talking that. Yeah.
Okay.
I guess I should have reworded just really any very large wave.
Okay.
I'm not into. Tight enclosed spaces.
Hmm.
Can't do it. Can't do it. Air raid sirens. Yeah. As soon as I hear them, I just panic. Even in movies.
Well, okay. That was going to be my follow-up, which was, how often are you hearing these in real life?
Only in movies.
Okay. Fantastic. Fantastic.
But it just makes my stomach drop the second I hear them because it just makes me think the worst. Snakes.
Sure.
The dark, but only when I'm alone. Because if my husband's in bed and it's like pitch black in there, I'm perfectly fine. But if it's pitch black and I'm alone, then I'm like, I hear every single sound that's happening in this home. Someone's clearly breaking in. It's like, no, no one's breaking in. It's the cats trying to get into you. It's the cats trying to break in.
Right.
So I was right. Um, Paper cuts.
Oh, I can't talk about it.
Yep. Amusement park rides that drop you.
That I forced you on. I know.
I did not say that. I'm just saying
No,
I
no,
don't
I
like
own it.
the feeling of dropping. Followed by roller coasters. I wanted to be clear. I thought there are a lot of amusement park rides I don't do. Clowns. Nope.
One of my longest standing fears. Yes.
Yeah. Not interested. Thunder. Yeah, I can handle like looking at lightning. You're like, oh, that's fun. But hearing that rumble, and especially when it's like a loud pop out of nowhere, no, thank you. The majority of horror movies,
Mm.
the T-Rex roar in Jurassic Park, but specifically when you're viewing it in theaters, because it's so loud
Yeah.
that it's like an air raid siren, but as a roar,
Yeah.
causes the same effect. Chainsaws.
Oh my God. It's so funny you say chainsaws because when I go to like Halloween Horror Nights at Universal Studios or whatever,
Yes,
people will inevitably they'll have the actors with these chainsaws, but they've taken
of
the
course.
chain off, but they're still running and they'll run them along the ground and sparks will fly. And it is the one thing I start to run. I run. I'm like, we don't know for sure that this person is like not going to go mental and try and touch it to us in some way. What if I accidentally trip and fall onto the chainsaw? It'll hurt even if there's no chain on it. Anyway, so I share that.
Mhm.
This morning, I walked Bean to the park and they're doing like this one park near here. They're trying to like redo it a little bit. And so there was like
Yeah.
a tree person. There was like a truck from like a tree company there.
Okay.
Guy is sitting in the truck and on the ground beside the truck is a running chainsaw with a chain on it, just sitting running. I was absolutely terrified. I was like, there's not stopping anything from someone just walking up, picking it up, and just ring. Like it would be Texas Chainsaw Massacre, Toronto Chainsaw Massacre.
I
And I
love
saw
it.
some cop cars and I almost went up to them to say, hey, can you do something about this? And then I just went, Lauren, go home. Go home. Stop it. You're
Mhm.
not old enough to be like, sirs, officers, stop.
There's a man with a chainsaw, and I don't believe he has a license.
Well, listen, it was just, but can you imagine unattended,
Yeah,
sitting on the ground?
there's absolutely no reason to have a running chainsaw just there. If you're using it, that's one thing. If it's on the ground turned off, that's another thing. On the ground just running? Like what are you even doing?
I don't even know how the person would have picked it up because it was like bouncing from the power of itself, right?
That's insane.
It's almost as though the guy got in over his head and didn't know how to pick it up and then was sitting in his truck like trying to figure out his next move
He was
or
he
trying to
was
wait for it to run out of gas, like one or the other.
the idea that he was possibly Googling how to pick up moving chainsaw is yeah, that would have been my go-to. So I get that. But why'd you put it down turned on?
I don't think it's an item that you're supposed to do that with. I think you're supposed to have it in your hand and turn it on and off in your hand.
That sounds safer.
Yeah.
I'd rather just not.
I should have taken down the name of the company. Why, Lauren? To call and make a complaint because I'm 65 years old and a Karen? I'm in a rock band. I
I
can't be reporting things to the police. I can't be calling companies making complaints about employees.
mean, is this where we go back to journaling? You could start if it helped, you could start a Karen journal. These are my complaints that I did not publicly complain about to make you feel better.
It's not a bad
Look,
idea.
it's a safety issue.
It was, and I know that like you could also say, Lauren, you should have reported it. Like I understand that, but then I also don't love that because I'm like, I fear retaliation.
Oh, I get that.
I want to remind you, and I won't get into it, but I will remind you that there was like the one time in my community that I like took a photo of a strange car and shared it with people. The person ended up coming back to my house. So it was like the fear of retaliation is real.
Yeah.
Anyway, continue your list of fears. One of
Well,
mine is clearly retaliation.
Oh, I didn't even get into like, you know, people being mad at me. Some, stuff like I didn't get into those things. I just went for more physical things. There's only one left, and it's, I mean, as soon as they came to my mind, I wrote them down. I didn't think to like edit this list in any way. But when I look at it, I'm like, Christy. But then I'm like, no, it's accurate and very, very specific. People in masks when they slowly tilt their head to the side while staring at you.
So you
Yeah.
mean like a Halloween mask?
Yeah. Yeah.
Not
Yeah.
like a
Yeah.
COVID mask.
I don't, I think it has to be a mask where I can't see their eyes, but I don't like they're just standing there staring at you and just the slow tilt of the head. I'm like,
Mm,
they're sizing me up to murder me.
right. Well, murder, I think, is a fear that could go on everyone's
Oh, yeah.
list.
I mean, I'm sure there's so many more if I think about it.
Right.
But
I thought you were going to end on shoebox dioramas. Like the reveal was going to be that the thing that you, much like you were like,
sure,
I need to draw birds, birds being one of my biggest fears.
right. Look, the only thing from the lists from last week, um my whole list of hobbies, I as soon as I read them out, it was like writing something on a paper and setting it on fire to just release it to the universe. It was like that's what I did where I was letting go with them, but
That's
I
beautiful.
still didn't get rid of the stamp carving because as you know, I once I said it, my phone heard and my phone was like, she wants to see more of those videos. So then of course I sent you one and I was like, it's soothing. It's soothing to watch her carve those.
I wasn't going to out you, but you've
Yeah.
brought it up. So, yes, when you sent that to me,
Mhm.
I'll be honest, I think you could be good at it. I think you should try it.
I kind of think I have to at this
What's
point.
the worst that can happen? You don't
Oh,
like it and then oh well, it was whatever 20, $40. Like I say money well spent.
I'm convinced I'm gonna like do a move and I'm gonna hit something and it's gonna the sharp thing is gonna come up and like stab my other hand. That's well, put that on the list of fears. I envision that being something that'll happen, but I just think I have to try because while I laughed at it when I came out with that list, ever since then, it's the only one on the list that I keep thinking about.
It still has a charge. See,
It
this is the same
does.
thing. Like if you go to a store and you see like a piece of clothing that you want and it sticks with you and you can't stop thinking about it, then I think it's like you got to buy it. Like I think you got to try it.
I think so. And the one specific company I'm looking at getting a thing from, Canadian.
Now you're supporting a Canadian small business.
I am.
Well,
So I'm like, well, this feels right. And then I'm like, I already have ideas on like I would love us. How often would I use it? I don't know. I was like, I would love to make my own stamp of like with my home address, but I would also love one for the PO box for the show. And so I'm like, I would love to make one with the PO box and maybe have a little wine glass on one side and a little Slurpee on the other. I'm
yeah.
like, this is adorable. I love it. And then all of a sudden it's like, is everyone just going to get stamps now? Like, am I just going to like every gift I ever give is now just going to be stamps because I'm going to end up getting so into this?
That's my hope. That's my hope.
My concern is I'm just worried because I know you make it and I know you're supposed to like take out the negative space.
Hmm.
And I'm just concerned that I'm gonna be like, I took out a spot I wasn't supposed to.
Well, I think that's probably going to be part of your learning curve.
The journey, it's gonna be, yeah. Fuck, am I gonna have to order something and then end up like recording me doing this for the first time? Is that what this is gonna be?
Yeah, unfortunately, yes. Or fortunately, depending on how you look at it.
I'll write down stamp carving. And
Now,
you'll
I do think you could maybe start with something bigger, like doing little numbers and like the address
that
or something.
sounds terrifying.
That might be like down the road project. But I think, start with something simple and see how it goes.
I feel like if I can come up with a picture that feels fairly simple, I'm
I
like,
was
that
going to
could be fun.
suggest just a heart. Start with a heart.
Look at you. This is why this is why you're in charge. Because I was like, something simple. What's something simple that I can think of? Oh, I don't know, maybe the Flyers logo.
Oh
Christy
my God.
Lynn. Christy Lynn. Calm down.
I'm saying
Maybe
just a simple shape.
you're right. You're right. And my concern is, I'm like, can I get like, because I've seen people who will carve, like, they'll get like the little pink erasers and they get those and they carve like little tiny things into them. Um, but this woman that I've seen, she has like a sheet, like a block of it that she uses. And I'm like, can I easily buy those somewhere else once I've used the one that comes in the kit? Assuming that I'm still thinking about it.
I'm sure that we can source for you some, I don't know, rubber paper. I don't know what would it be, sheets of rubber? I don't
I don't
know.
even know. But then I'm
Rubber
also
sheets.
like,
Don't look up rubber sheets. That's something else.
but I'm like, okay, if I get to the point where I'm like, okay, I'm living for this, am I going to start carving those tiny little pink erasers? And just be like, here's a drawer full of all the stamp carving I've ever done? Look, if I say it out loud on this
Mhm.
and then make a video for it somewhere, probably Patreon, I can write it off on my taxes
Yeah,
and have a good time.
absolutely.
I don't know. Okay, fine. I'll maybe try that one hobby out of all the hobbies that I was like, what should I do? When we discovered I already had hobbies. When it's like reading, that's a hobby. Unboxing, that's a hobby. Hockey cards, that's a hobby. You're done. You're good. But I'm like, no, no. Stamp carving. Okay, fine. I
Again,
also haven't fully written off stuff, those fucking dioramas.
I knew it. I knew it. I knew it. I was waiting for this.
There is a young woman
Here we
on
go.
Instagram, I'm sure somewhere on TikTok. I have no idea what her name is. I do not follow her, but it's just when you're doom scrolling, she'll come up occasionally. And she has made this little diorama that looks like um basically like the closet at like an elementary school gym. So it's all the like floor hockey sticks, those scooters with the handles that you always ran over your own fingers, like hula hoops, all of these things. And she's making all of this out of tiny little things. And I'm like, I love it. And
Look,
I don't
I need to
think
make
my
something
fingers are not meant for tiny little works.
yet.
But I think we hit the nail on the head of I really want I want a creative outlet. I shouldn't have specifically said hobby. I should have said creative outlet. And I think stamp carving might be my
Look,
start.
I need you to know
Mhm.
very genuinely that my laughter is delight. It's not
Of
that I think
course.
that it's silly. It's
Oh,
it's
of
that
course.
I just never saw it coming. Like no
Yeah.
one could have predicted things like stamp carving and shoebox dioramas. Like it's not that those
Mhm.
things, I think those things are great and I think you should do them.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, the fact that you were just like, I need a creative outlet and I think that it's stamp carving is so specific. You have to try it.
Yeah. Again, I think I need to give it a chance. What's it
Give it
gonna
a
hurt?
chance. Give it a chance.
The
Um,
fact that I've already said out loud that I should film this. Well, now I'm fucked. I'm gonna have to.
they're gonna follow up with you.
They are. They are.
Well, listen, speaking of following up, what you drinking over there?
I'm doing a strawberry lemonade
Oh,
from
how
Wendy's.
wonderful.
They don't pay me to say that, but it is what it is. It was my son had dinner from there, and I'm like, if I'm picking up dinner, I'm also getting a lemonade and then home to record. So,
Absolutely. I'm just drinking water. I've got nothing exciting over here, but I finished my Diet Coke. It's late at night. I can't be chugging Diet Coke this late. I'll be up all
oh,
to all hours. Well, listen, let's get into the case. We're, of course, discussing the Rolex Killer on today's show, someone I've never heard of before, and I cannot wait to learn a little bit more, starting with this synopsis right now. In the summer of 1996, the body of Ronald Platt was pulled out of the English Channel by a fishing trawler. During the investigation, police find a second man who also claims to be Ronald Platt. And since both men have the same height, hair, and eye color, the lines between fiction and reality start to blur. But soon police discover that while one of these men is the real Ronald Platt, the other is one of Canada's most wanted criminals. So, what happened to the real Ronald Platt? Who was the imposter? And is it possible to catch a killer using only a Rolex watch? Christy Oxborrow investigates.
Now, I love that I'm lazy enough that this is how I'm going to do this.
I can't wait.
For the patrons who are like, what episode is this? You told me it was going to be a different episode. I know the episode is a different title on our newsletter, but I promise you it's the same episode.
Same person.
It was right. I had it written down last time when we were recorded the last episode, and I was like, you know what? Yeah, I don't love that as a title. I'm going to go with this as a title. And Lauren was like, great.
Yeah.
Because I could be like, I'm going to steal a bus a la Speed, put a bomb on it, but drive it myself and then just like destroy so many fences. And she would be like, I love that for you. Like I could say anything and she would
Yeah.
be supportive, is what I'm saying, because she's just so supportive. So when I
Well,
was like, hey, I should change the channel or change the channel, I should change the title. And she was like, if you want to, great. I should
yeah.
carve stamps out of erasers. Great.
Yeah.
Again, always supportive.
But listen,
also-
again, my laughter was never judgment, only
Of
delight.
course. Why would I put a bomb on a bus and drive it?
That's not my problem or question to ask. See, this is part of it where it's like, I don't need to know your motive. What I need to know is, what are we doing to handle it?
You're right. You're right. Oh, God. Bombs. That's another fear.
Mm-hmm.
Again, once you really start thinking about fears, it's just never ending and you never want to leave your home. So,
I get that.
disclaimer, this episode will contain brief mentions of intimate partner violence and child sexual assault, so trigger warning for those who need it. On July 28th, 1996, fisherman John Kopic and his son Craig were on the fishing trawler Malcary. Malcary? Maybe Malcary is better. About 6 miles off the coast of Brixham, a small town in the county Devon in southwest England. Around 12:30 p.m., Craig went to check the nets from their last catch when he made the shocking discovery of a dead body amongst the fish. Craig also found a 10-pound plow anchor, but they weren't sure if it was with the body or not. It was just kind of also in the net. John contacted the Brixham Coast Guard, who came out to the trawler and picked up the body. 2 days later, a police surgeon, didn't know that was a thing, inspected the body. He didn't do a full autopsy because he wasn't qualified to do so, but he looked everything over, kind of hoping to find a cause of death. The body was that of a white male, approximately 35 to 45. There was a tattoo on his right hand. They couldn't really tell what it was. It was some sort of symbol. They guessed maybe it was a star. The victim was wearing a blue checkered shirt, green Levi's cords, and brown loafers. The pockets of his pants had been turned out, so police assumed the man had been robbed, but he was wearing a gold necklace and a Rolex wristwatch. There were signs of early decomposition, but the doctor believed that the body had been in the water less than a week. There was a small gash on the back of the man's head and bruising on the man's left hip and left knee. The doctor, however, was unable to determine a cause of death, and police were unable to determine the man's identity. So, since the John Doe didn't match any of the missing persons reports, the police published photos of the man's tattoo along with information about the body in a local newspaper. Unfortunately, they didn't get any leads. On July 31st, a forensic pathologist was brought in to do an actual autopsy. They noted the gash on the back of the head wasn't sufficient enough to cause death. The lungs were both bloated and waterlogged, which means that John Doe's official cause of death was drowning. It was suggested that if the gash occurred before the man went into the water, it's possible that he was unconscious at the time of his death. It was estimated that the man drowned 1 to 2 weeks before he was found. So not only did the pathologist give an official cause of death, he also gave the suggestion that the police contact Rolex because there was a serial number on the watch, and he said, it's possible the company keeps records. So police speak to Rolex. Sure enough, they were able to determine that the Oyster Perpetual wristwatch found on John Doe's body was made in Geneva in 1967 and purchased by a man named Ronald Platt. According to Rolex's records, Ronald had the watch serviced once in 1982 and again in 1986. At the time of the last service, Ronald was living in an apartment in Chelmsford, which is about 46 miles northeast of London. Police found that Ronald moved around a lot, which might explain why no one had noticed that he was missing. The detectives working the case contacted police in Chelmsford and asked for them to go to Ronald Platt's last known address. Unfortunately, Ronald had moved, but his former landlord had a phone number for Ronald's best friend, David Davis, which, I mean, that's like a movie star name at that point. David Davis? Come on. So David said he hadn't spoken to Ronald since June, when Ronald said that he was moving to France to start a business. David said that he even loaned Ronald 3,000 British pounds to help him get started. And unfortunately, he didn't have a current phone number or an address for Ronald. He suggested Ronald may have gone to the La Rochelle area. But it's interesting to me that David just didn't seem concerned that he had loaned a large sum of money to someone and had absolutely no way of contacting them. But I mean, I guess if Lauren was like, I need 3,000 British pounds and I can't tell you why, I'd go, here you go.
Yeah, again, it's not my
How do
business. Like, I
yeah,
don't need to know. I'm like,
yeah,
I'll send the check. Like,
yeah, done. So I guess they were tight, is what we're saying. So the police told David that they had discovered a body and they believed it was Ronald. David said they had been friends for the past 2 years and they met in Harrogate, Yorkshire. He said that they hit it off as they both had dual citizenship in Britain and Canada. They both liked boats. That was enough to be full bros. David said Ronald previously served in the British Army, so police contacted the Army and got Ronald's records. That included his dental records, so police were able to compare them to John Doe and officially verify that the victim was, in fact, 51-year-old Ronald Platt. When police contacted Ronald's family, his younger brother Brian said they hadn't spoken in 6 months and they had rarely seen each other over the last decade, as Ronald mostly kept to himself. Brian suggested that Ronald may have suffered with mental health issues. So at this point, police felt it was possible that maybe it was just an accident and Ronald slipped on a boat and hit his head and fell into the water. Brian was also able to verify that the unknown tattoo on Ronald's hand was, in fact, a maple leaf because they lived part of their childhood in Canada and it was Ronald's dream to go back. So, Ronald Joseph Platt was born around 1945 in the UK. His family immigrated to Canada in 1955, where his father worked as a teacher in Pence, Saskatchewan, which is fun for me to say because Pence is only 42 clicks east on the number one, which is the most Canadian sentence I have ever said, probably ever. For those who don't speak Canadian, I mean that Pence is about 42 kilometers or 26 miles east of Moose Jaw on the Trans Canada Highway. So, when Ronald was 16, he returned to the UK where he joined the British Army. 4 years later, in 1965, Ronald got married, and in 1967, they had a son. The couple divorced in the early 70s, and in 1973, Ronald left the Army. Since he had a skill with electronics, Ronald became a TV and radio repairman. He then spent more than a decade in a relationship with a woman named Elaine Boys. Elaine said she met Ronald Platt at a party in 1980. At the time, Elaine was 21, Ronald was 35. We don't love it, but within 6 months, the couple had moved in together. Twice in the 80s, Ronald tried to move to Canada because he wanted to return and has been wanting to return since his teens. The plan was for Elaine to join him, but Ronald always ended up coming back before Elaine ever made the trip. The first time in the early 80s, Ronald was unable to get a visa and a work permit, so he had no choice but to return to the UK. The second time in 1987, Ronald returned simply because he was lonely and he missed Elaine. In 1989, Elaine got a job as a receptionist at Harry Spencer Auctioneers in Harrogate, Yorkshire. In February of or March of 1991, a man came into the auctioneers to ask about a painting. Elaine said the man was very charming and he introduced himself as David Davis. He said he was originally from Vermont and had recently moved from Geneva to London. David, who had experience in international finance and private banking, said he was looking to start his own company, Cavendish Corporation. It was never specifically stated what the company was going to do, um, but David said he liked the idea of buying and selling antiques or maybe making a coffee table book. So, his plans for a business are very similar to my plans for a hobby all over the place. So David offered Elaine a job as his personal secretary, but since David didn't really have a business plan yet, Elaine turned him down. A few weeks later, David returned to town and had a meeting with both Elaine and Ronald. David and Ronald hit it off immediately, so when David again offered Elaine a job, this time she said yes. She officially left the auctioneers in May 1991 and started to work at Cavendish Corporation. David made Elaine and Ronald directors of the company and set up all of the bank accounts under their names. David said his ex wife, who lived in Canada, had recently started legal proceedings against him to get alimony and child support. He said he had two children who were living with his wife. David said by putting the bank accounts in Ronald and Elaine's names, he could then hide money from his wife, who David described as controlling and greedy. David sent Elaine to France to scout potential properties for David's real estate portfolio, as well as to Geneva to photograph fountains for a potential coffee table book. Again, all over the place. Um, she also bought paintings and antiques for the business, and while traveling, Elaine was told to deposit large sums of money into various bank accounts in Geneva, as well as set up bank accounts in France, Italy, and Switzerland. Elaine said David always paid her travel expenses in cash, and he would often give her Swiss currency and tell her to convert it into British pounds. At the time, Ronald was working as a TV and radio repairman, and in early 1992, David not only encouraged Ronald to start his own repair business, he also gave Ronald the money to do it. David also helped Ronald and Elaine purchase an apartment. Unfortunately, Ronald's business didn't do very well, so for Christmas that year, David gave Ronald and Elaine one-way tickets to Canada because he knew both had been interested in going for years. Elaine said she would need a return ticket because her sister was getting married in July 1993 and Elaine absolutely had to be there. David agreed and also said he would personally handle the sale of both their apartment and Ronald's dying business. On February 22nd, 1993, Ronald and Elaine flew to Calgary, Alberta, Canada, which is a real choice to travel to Canada in the middle of winter. The day they arrived was minus 35 Fahrenheit, which is minus 37 Celsius, which, is quite common for that time of year. Freezing, but common. Unfortunately, Ronald and Elaine weren't prepared for that kind of weather, so they were pretty miserable, which is more than fair. Canadian winters definitely take getting used to. The couple called David, who suggested they drive to Vancouver, British Columbia, where the temperatures might be more tolerable. They took his advice, they drove to British Columbia, but they just ended up traveling back to Calgary. Ronald seemed relatively happy there. Elaine was miserable. So when she returned to the UK in July 1993 for her sister's wedding, she just refused to go back. So at that point, Ronald and Elaine officially broke up. Once Elaine was back in England, David Davis kept pushing her to return to Canada, but Elaine was adamant she was not going back. About a week later, after, trying to push her to go back, David up and leaves town. He tells Elaine he's going to go to Scotland and then move to France. He left no phone number, but had a P.O. box in London. In 1995, Ronald lost his job and struggled to get a new one, so he returned to the UK, saying it's because he disliked Canada's long, brutal winters. And as someone who has experienced more than 40 of those brutal winters, I can honestly say it is absolutely more than fair. Canadian winters are challenging at best. Elaine and Ronald kept in touch, and Elaine said she last spoke with Ronald in May 1996. At the time, he told her he was looking for work in Reading. When Elaine was interviewed by police in October 1996, she was shocked to learn of Ronald's death. She said she had spoken to David Davis 2 or 3 weeks prior, and he mentioned nothing about Ronald's death. So, how did Ronald go from job hunting in Reading to drowning in the English Channel more than 180 miles away? Well, his last known address was in Chelmsford, so detectives checked local council tax records and they found Ronald had sent a note that stated, I'm moving to France and I am no longer liable for paying property tax. Okay, so detectives contact the post office, hoping that maybe there would be a forwarding address. And sure enough, Ronald asked for his mail to be sent to Little London Farmhouse in the hamlet of Woodham Walter in Essex. And I want you to know, even though nobody asked, I am so completely charmed by the fact that some of the UK addresses are just names of the house rather than a number and a street name. For some reason, it feels so magical, and I absolutely love it. Like how Kate Winslet's house in the movie The Holiday was Rose Hill Cottage. It's beautiful, and it genuinely makes me mad about my own lame ass address. So, even though police weren't fully convinced that Ronald's death was foul play, they went to Little London Farmhouse in the hopes of finding Ronald's possessions so they could return them to Ronald's family. But while looking for the house, they got lost, so they knocked on a random door to ask directions. The man who opened the door was named Frank. He said, Little London Farmhouse is that house next door. And yeah, Ronald Platt lives there. Frank said Ronald and his wife Noelle moved in September 1994. Police were surprised because this was the first mention of a wife since Ronald's first marriage in the 60s. Frank said Ronald's wife is a lot younger, maybe early 20s, and the couple had a toddler and a baby. Again, this was all news to the police because no one in Ronald's life mentioned anything about a second wife or any younger children. When police said Ronald had been dead for months, Frank said, well, that's impossible because Ronald and his wife recently left on a trip to York or Scotland, and Frank was keeping an eye on the house for them while they were gone. So, is this some sort of mix up? Are there two men named Ronald Platt? Or does this mean that someone else has been using Ronald Platt's identity? Well, police found a woman named Isabel Rogers, and she worked closely with Ronald Platt for over a year. Isabel was working towards a diploma in therapy, so she applied for a position at a company called Solutions Focused Therapy. Ronald Platt was the office manager and told Isabel he was going to hire her for one shift a week, but he wanted to keep it a secret from his business partners, so Ronald was going to pay Isabel personally. which is shady at best. Ronald claimed he was born in Liverpool before immigrating to the United States, where he spent years in Vermont working in international finance. So we know right out the gate this man isn't the real Ronald Platt because Ronald Platt never lived in the US. But of course, Isabel didn't know that. So fake Ronald tells Isabel about his childhood, saying he barely knew his father and his mother was hard on him, forcing him to do things he should never be expected to do. Well, my God, what kinds of things did this mother make her son do? Oh, things like washing the floor and doing laundry. I get the impression that fake Ronald was sexist because he seemed to believe that men shouldn't have to clean. He also said that women shouldn't have money because they just simply don't need it. I can't with this man already. So, fake Ronald claimed he married young and his wife was incredibly controlling. He said he had a breakdown. He left his job in finance and decided to leave his family and start over completely. Fake Ronald said his ex wife wasn't attractive enough to be married to a man as handsome as he was.
Oh, God.
Fake Ronald then found a new love interest, a 22-year-old named Noelle. Fake Ronald was in his late 40s at the time. He said Noelle was visiting from the United States and attending Chelsea Art College. Some American adult, I don't know if it was like an uncle or a parent or something of Noelle's, allegedly asked fake Ronald to keep an eye on her. So he took her out for dinner, and 2 weeks later, he moved in with her.
Hmm.
Not exactly what they had in mind, Ron. A few weeks later, fake Ronald and Noelle got married at the registry office. Fake Ronald claims that Noelle's parents were so very supportive of their relationship. I'm sure. The couple had two children, Emily in September 1993 and Lillian in January 1996. Fake Ronald constantly bragged to Isabel about how beautiful his young wife was. At one point, he showed Isabel a photo of Noelle, who Isabel said looked like she just got out of the shower and was practically naked. Fake Ronald then said, and this is a quote, her body is actually getting better with age. Gross. You know who actually might have a great body? A woman your own age. Anyway, this asshole then later complained about that same body, saying he was disappointed to know his wife's boobs were going to shrink after she gave birth to their second baby. Yuck. He's disgusting. And just when you think this jackass can't get any viler, according to Isabel, fake Ronald would often tell her that his new marriage was so great because they had sex all the time and his ex wife never wanted sex. Isabel said on Mondays, fake Ronald would come into work bragging about how much sex he had on the weekend. He told her, quote, Noelle will do anything for me. She will do everything for me that my ex wife didn't. Whatever your imagination can dredge up, that's what we get up to. Fucking barf, man. Like, what are we even doing? Ugh. But aside from fake Ronald's inability to have boundaries with coworkers, Isabel said he was also known to have massive mood swings and incredibly full sobbing tears one minute and just angry outbursts the next. At one point, fake Ronald told her, quote, if things get bad, I'll skip off somewhere else like I've always done. Sketchy at best.
Mm-hmm.
In July 1996, fake Ronald and his family went on vacation to Devon with plans to sail their 24-foot yacht, Lady Jane. On July 21st, fake Ronald called Isabel to say he'd been on an accident on the boat. He said he slipped and banged his chest badly. Isabel said he sounded panicked because he was alone. Noelle and the kids were back at the hotel. Hours later, fake Ronald called and told someone else the same sob story. He fell on the boat and hurt himself and didn't know what to do. So at this point, I'm like, what's the point of that fucking story? Since the real Ronald Platt drowned, they assume about July 20th. What was the point of calling July 21st to say, I fell and hurt myself? Were these phone calls his way of explaining why Ronald's body would later be found in the water? But instead of skipping town and faking his death, he just went back to life as usual? Again, what was the point of calling to say you were injured? He wasn't calling for help. He was just calling to say he was badly hurt, but that he'd deal with it himself. Was it all just for sympathy? Was he using it as an excuse because he was going to have to return days later than what he said he was going to? It just makes no sense to me. But a month later, he told Isabel he needed to take his family to New York because Noelle's father had a heart attack. The original plan was they were going to be gone for 2 weeks. But a week into the trip, fake Ronald called to say Noelle's father had died. But then on schedule, the family returned home. And then soon after decided on another trip. And that's when they asked their neighbor Frank to watch their house. So at this point, police knew that someone was masquerading as Ronald Platt. But who? Everyone who met this fake Ronald said that he told them he was American. So police just immediately thought of the only American involved in this case already, and that's David Davis. Since both David and fake Ronald claimed to be from Vermont, police were convinced it wasn't just a coincidence. They also believed David may have murdered the real Ronald just to use his identity. So on October 31st, 1996, police arrested David Davis on suspicion of murder. When David was searched, police found two IDs in David's pockets, one for David Davis and another for Ronald Platt.
Oh my word.
And since they didn't know how much Noelle may have been involved, she was arrested as well. They told her to pack a bag for her children, and when they went in to check on her, they caught her shoving cash and gold bars into a backpack.
Uh-huh.
The 3-year-old was sent to stay with a friend. The baby was given to child services. But police still needed proof of the murder, and since they could only legally hold David for 36 hours, they had to find it fast. When interviewed, David said he was David Wallace Davis, born February 17th, 1944, and he denied any involvement in Ronald's murder. His fingerprints were sent to Interpol, and while they waited for results, they found phone records that confirmed that David was in Devon around the time of Ronald Platt's death, and the GPS on the boat was turned off at 8:59 p.m. on July 20th, the day the police believe Ron was murdered. The boat's last known location was less than 4 nautical miles from where Ronald's body was found. They also knew Ronald was on the boat because there was DNA from hair found on a pillow, came back as a match to Ronald, and Ronald's fingerprints were found on a bag in a locker on the boat. Police then remembered that when the body was found, in the net there was also a 10-pound plow anchor. Well, that anchor matches the exact dimensions of the bruising on Ronald's left hip and left knee. So now they believe that David hit Ronald in the head, looped the anchor to the left side of Ronald's trousers, pushed him into the water, knowing full well that Ronald couldn't swim and that he was going to drown. Police police did a search of Little London farmhouse. They discovered more than $29,000 in cash and 17 gold bars. There was also a birth certificate for David Davis, a driver's license and birth certificate for Ronald Joseph Platt, and bank cards for David Davis, R.J. Platt, and R.L. Platt, which is a new one. There were also bank papers, medical papers, and credit cards for Elaine Boyes, Ronald's ex girlfriend. The house had very little furniture, several cardboard boxes, so it looked like the fake Platts were getting ready to run. And just when police were so convinced that David Davis was responsible for Ronald Platt's murder, they hear back from Interpol, who found a match to David's fingerprints. And it turns out that David Davis wasn't his real name either. The fingerprints came back as a match to Albert Johnson Walker, a fugitive who was wanted in Canada for theft and fraud. He had been on the run since December 1990, and at the time of his arrest was number 4 on Interpol's most wanted list.
Wow.
Albert Johnson Walker was born August 9th, 1945 in Hamilton, Ontario. To put it bluntly, he barely knew his father and greatly disliked his mother. He was one of 5 children, and when he was 6 years old, his parents sold their farm in Freelton and moved to Hamilton. Albert dropped out of school at the age of 16, and then I just assume he must have gotten his GED at some point because he later enrolled at the University of Waterloo, where he met Barbara MacDonald at a youth group. Albert and Barbara were married in October 1968 and continued attending university, although Barbara was the only one of the two to earn a degree. Albert worked at the department store Zeller's as a trainee manager, which he said was beneath him. So he quit pretty early on. Albert and Barbara moved to Scotland in 1970, where Albert worked as a health insurance salesman. He claims that at this moment in time, he earned a degree from the University of Edinburgh. He did not. He never earned a degree anywhere, ever. While in Scotland, Albert completed only 2 post secondary courses, one in creative writing and one in computer training. In 1971, they returned to Ontario, where Albert got a job at the library at the University of Waterloo, and Barbara worked at a small library in the suburbs. In 1975, Albert left the library and briefly worked as a general laborer at a feed and supply store. Then he just had a series of jobs, including, but not limited to, cattle herdsman, bank teller, and life insurance salesman. I like that being a trainee manager was beneath him, but nothing else was. I
Yeah.
find that fascinating. In 1978, Albert and Barbara bought a farmhouse in Paris, Ontario, and since Barbara had kind of like a knack for numbers, they purchased a bookkeeping business 8 miles away in the town of Ayr. They registered the new business as Walker Financial Services Inc. and marketed it as bookkeeping, investments, and more, a one stop financial shop. The business did so well that in 1980 they absorbed another bookkeeping business in Woodstock, and by 1986, Walker Financial had become one of the most well known financial companies in southern Ontario. The business employed 30 staff across 6 branches in Paris, London, Stratford, Guelph, Brantford, and Hagersville. And yes, I'm referring to the cities in Ontario, not the European cities of the same names. While Walker Financial was doing well, Albert started an offshore company called United Canvest Corporation Cayman Limited. He would advise his clients to use the company to hide money from Revenue Canada, which is, like the Canadian version of the IRS. Albert said the money invested would get put into fail safe Canadian government bonds, and the interest would just get reinvested. And while Canadian tax laws once allowed offshore tax shelters, in the early 80s, they made it illegal. So basically, Albert got into it right at the time that they were making it illegal. The Ontario Securities Commission was notified of what Albert was doing, and it kind of seems like they didn't do anything about it and just let him keep going, which is unfortunate because between 1982 and 1990, uh, he used that offshore company to scam 2.6 million from his clients, which in 2025 is closer to $6 to $8 million. So in 1990, Barbara starts to question the legitimacy of Albert's financials. Because again, knack with numbers, she knows something's not right. But he refuses to give her any answers, let her see anything, any of that. He took out a $90,000 mortgage on their farmhouse, which he just kind of used as a personal line of credit. And then 3 months later, he took out a second $90,000 mortgage on that same house. Around this time, Barbara accused Albert of having an affair when she found love letters in his coat pocket. It should be noted, Barbara and Albert had 4 children: Jillian in 1972, Sheena in 1975, Duncan in 1979, and Heather in 1982. Albert openly admitted to the affair. So Barbara told him, "Kick rocks, get the fuck out of here." To which Albert responded, "Barbara should be the one to leave," which is insane. Um, and proof that Albert just isn't a good dude. You know, the whole scamming people already tipped us off he was a bad dude. But if you want to know how bad, the reverends at their church described Albert as pretty cocky, smugly superior, and consistently putting other people down.
Oh boy.
Yeah, yeah. So Barbara gets a divorce lawyer. Lawyer immediately requests copies of Albert's financial documents, which of course he refuses to give. Barbara requests full custody of their 4 children, who are now 18, 15, 11, and 8. Barbara also requested child support, spousal support, and possession of the house. She said Albert had a temper and had threatened to blow her away. On August 24th, Albert said he was heading to Calgary on a business trip. Since Barbara was going to work as usual, that left the oldest daughters, Jillian and Sheena, in charge of the younger 2 children. While Barbara was at work, she called home just to check in, see how the kids were doing. And weird enough, her phone number was disconnected. So Barbara calls a friend named Mark and asks him to go check on the kids. And when Mark gets to the house, he finds a moving truck in the driveway. Albert had packed up everything of value and all 4 kids. Mark asked, "Where are you going, bud?" And Albert said he was moving and it wasn't Barbara's business.
Ooh.
Married for more than 20 years. And after you get caught cheating, you try and take the children and then say it's not their mother's business? It's lunacy. Mark, thankfully, did some quick thinking, wrote down the license plate of the truck, went to the rental company, and they gave him the address of where that truck was headed. And good thing he did, because if he hadn't, Barbara might never have seen her children again. Because as it is, once she got the address and she went there, Albert refused to let Barbara see her children for nearly a week, which, doesn't sound legal. And then just when you're like, that doesn't make sense, a judge gave custody of the youngest 2 children to Barbara and the oldest 2 children to Albert. Both were ordered to have reasonable access to their other children. Barbara filed a motion for full custody of all 4, but was denied. The idea that this man kidnapped his children with no plan of telling their mother where they were going, and he ends up being given custody of 2 of the kids? That's insane. At some point after the custody hearing, Albert physically assaulted Barbara at the house, but she chose not to go to the police. Then months later, Barbara was given possession of the house. Albert went inside against Barbara's wishes and pushed her around. Albert was charged with forcible entry, so it was routine for him to be fingerprinted for such a charge. And thank God he was, or Interpol would never have figured out who he was 6 years later. On December 5th, 1990, Albert and his 15-year-old daughter Sheena flew to England on a 2-week business trip. After 2 weeks, they still hadn't returned home. And based on Albert's financials, it is clear he had been planning this move for a while. In the summer of 1990, Albert opened multiple new bank accounts, shuffling money between them, and then he wired $700,000 to a bank in Switzerland. It was only after he was gone that detectives had determined that Albert Walker had taken millions from 70 clients, many of which who lost their entire life savings. They believe that the number is probably closer to 12 million, but they only found physical proof of 3.2 million that was missing. In 1993, an international warrant was put out for Albert Walker for 19 counts of fraud, theft, and money laundering. He then made his way up to number 4 on Interpol's most wanted list. When he left Canada, Albert set up a false trail, making it seem like he went to London, Geneva, and Paris. He settled 200 miles north of London using the name David Davis. And if you're wondering, well, where did the name David Davis come from? Well, David Davis is a legit person. In 1981, the real David Davis borrowed $35,000 from Walker Financial to keep his business going. Albert said that for collateral, he was going to need to hold on to David's birth certificate. And then David just kind of forgot that Albert had it until the real David tried to apply for his pension in 1996. Throughout the 80s, Albert did all the bookkeeping for David's business. So that means Albert had access to David's social insurance number and his signature. Plus, he had his birth certificate. And since both men were similar heights and ages with brown hair and brown eyes, it did not take much for Albert to pass himself off as David Davis. Before fleeing the country, Albert used David's birth certificate to get other forms of ID under David's name and used his social insurance number to open a series of bank accounts. So once Albert gets to England, his full David Davis identity is just there, sitting there, ready to go. And of course, once Albert met Ronald Platt, who was also similar age, height, brown hair, brown eyes, Albert saw the chance to cash in on a new identity. First, Albert used Ronald and Elaine, without their knowledge, to move his stolen money around through his sham company, Cavendish Corporation, to various accounts in Switzerland, Italy, and France. And when they were no longer useful to him, Albert sent Ronald and Elaine to Canada, hoping that that would be the end of it. He then used rubber stamps with Ronald and Elaine's signatures on them to continue moving the money around himself.
Did
If
he
you
carve them
think,
himself?
look, I hope he did. I hope he did. If you think this isn't, now I'm thinking, is this why my phone keeps showing me rubber stamps? I don't know. Uh, so by this point, Albert had Ronald's personal information, and then he just turned around and used it as his own. But when Ronald came back to the country, Albert knew he needed to get rid of Ronald for good, or it was going to cause real problems for him. So on July 20th, Albert took Ronald out on his boat, hit him, tied an anchor to his trousers, and tossed him in the water. And I know what you're thinking. If Albert Walker was masquerading as David Davis, masquerading as Ronald Platt, where the fuck did his wife Noelle Platt come from? Well, the woman who Albert claimed was his 22-year-old wife was actually his 21-year-old daughter. Mhm.
Disgusting.
Yep. When Albert fled Canada in December 1990, he took his 15-year-old daughter Sheena with him. When they arrived in England, Albert claimed to be David Davis, an American banker and single father. But when Sheena became pregnant in 1993, Albert decided it would be easier to hide by claiming they were husband and wife. And since he had all the information he needed to steal Ronald's identity, Albert felt it was the right time to then become Ronald Platt. During their time in Europe, Sheena gave birth to two daughters, one in 1993, the other in 1996. The paternity of the children has never been publicly stated. Many of us assume Albert is the father. Um, Unfortunately, the police said they had no legal grounds to get DNA from either child. So unless Sheena ever goes public, we're never going to know. She did self publish a couple of books, but the father of her children was never outright stated. But it's surprising to me there was no legal ground to get DNA from the children because if Albert is the father, then couldn't they add child sexual abuse or incest to his charges? I'm not a lawyer or a cop or a professional in any capacity, but even if Albert tried to claim it wasn't abuse, at the very least, it's incest, which is illegal in England. Um, but whether Albert is the father of those children or not, the reveal that Noelle was his daughter and not his wife makes Albert's inappropriate comments to Isabel so much worse. All the times he talked about how beautiful Noelle's body was and all the sex they had. Gross. I can only hope he was just going over the top so they would seem like a happily married couple. But I don't love that he had a photo of his nearly naked daughter or that he was showing it off to people.
Oh,
During her first police interview, Sheena admitted to not being Noelle. She agreed to testify against her father. The police believed that Sheena was not knowingly involved in Albert's schemes, so she was released without charge. They also believed that her children needed her more, so they were just like, set her free, let her go be with her kids. Albert Walker, however, was officially charged with the murder of Ronald Platt. At Albert's trial, Sheena testified that Albert told her they needed to change their names because Barbara was going after Albert's money. It wasn't your money to begin with.
hmm.
Anyway, still,
Yeah.
when Sheena became pregnant, which she did not elaborate on, Albert was the one that suggested they present as husband and wife. Sheena also stated that Albert made her use Elaine Boy's identity anytime she had any medical issue. So it would always come down as Elaine. Elaine Boyce testified, and it just really showed the calculated way that Albert used her and Ronald to launder his shady money before ultimately stealing Ronald's identity. And then Albert gets on the stand and he sheds some tears and says he would never hurt Ronald. Ronald was his best friend. They were so close, in fact, that Ronald actually let him use Ronald's identity,
Okay.
which makes no fucking sense. Why would you even need to use it? Albert then admitted, you know what? Yeah, we were on the boat that night together. And then Ronald attacked me and fell overboard in the struggle. He fell overboard with an anchor attached to his pants? Get bent. But okay, let's ignore the whole anchor thing. You're telling me that your best friend went overboard in a struggle and you didn't radio for help or go in the water to save your best friend? I talked about Doritos in a sexual manner
Yep.
to metaphorically get in the water for her.
Yeah.
You think I'm just gonna drive
Without
on
pause.
without pause? So you think you're best friends, Albert? Get fucked,
Get
sir.
out of here.
Yeah. Well, thankfully, the jury didn't buy his bullshit either, because Albert was found guilty of first-degree murder and sentenced to life imprisonment. In February 2005, Albert was transferred to Canadian custody to face 19 counts of theft, fraud, and money laundering. Albert pled guilty and was sentenced to an additional 4 years plus an additional year for violating the Bankruptcy Act. I know I'm not a professional. I'm just genuinely surprised that Albert was never charged with kidnapping or child endangerment at the very least. He took a 15-year-old to another country and kept her away from her mother for years, not to mention the potential abuse, and yet Albert was never charged with anything relating to Sheena. Albert Walker was sent to a penitentiary, there we go, in Kingston, where he remained until it closed in 2013. He was then transferred to a prison in British Columbia, and in 2017, he was then transferred to a minimum security prison in the province. Albert has been allowed to attend church outside of the prison on 23 separate occasions, and in 2023, he was granted a 2-month long unescorted absence to participate in a church program called Choices, which claims to teach simple tools to help people get more out of life. I think Albert's gotten plenty, so leave him where he is. Albert applied for parole in February 2024, but was denied, as the parole board felt he had a high risk of reoffending. And that makes sense because Albert now denies committing any fraud and says he only ever participated in legitimate business ventures. They just didn't work out. Yeah, they didn't work out for the people who invested. They worked out for you, though. So, since Ronald Platt's wristwatch allowed police to determine Ronald's identity, which then led to finding his killer, Albert Walker is often referred to as the Rolex Killer. And to answer my question from earlier, can a Rolex help solve a murder? It can, because it did. And since the case has so many twists and turns, it shouldn't be surprising. It has been the subject of numerous projects like the CBC podcast Sea of Lies, numerous books, including self-published titles from Sheena and from Barbara. In 2000, a play based on Albert's crimes called Stolen Lives premiered at the Blythe Festival Theater. There was a made for TV movie about this case in 2002. And in 2010, British soap opera Coronation Street did an entire storyline based on Albert Walker. And while the story is wild enough to seem like a movie, in reality, I hope Albert remains in prison for the rest of his life. He took a man's life with absolutely no remorse, simply so he could avoid paying the alimony and child support that his ex wife was owed. Not to mention the fact that he took the life savings from dozens of people, including many who just never financially recovered. And then he had the balls to say he never did anything illegal. And do not get me started on what he put his family through, especially Sheena. In short, I hope Albert rots, and I hope that Sheena and her children are safe and surrounded with love and support. Reporting for True Crime and Cocktails, I'm Christy Oxborrow.
Wowzer. What a wild ride.
It went everywhere. Yeah.
It's fascinating story. Well, listen, let's grab a drink, hit the can, and we'll be back with more about the Rolex Killer case on this episode of True Crime and Cocktails. 2 on 3. 1, 2, 3. Welcome back to this episode of True Crime and Cocktails. We're, of course, discussing the Rolex Killer. This is a wild case. My gosh, it's fascinating that the stolen identities, like a man was stealing an identity, and then murdered one of those people. Like I can understand why they made so many different movies and plays and
Yeah.
Coronation Street. I mean, it all just, it just makes sense. First thing I wrote down was 42 clicks east on the one. You then translated it, so there's no need for me to, but boy, oh boy, was I charmed.
Maybe that should be my first stamp carving. Stop it. Nothing with numbers or letters, Christy. Simple shapes.
I'm just saying, just work up to it. Okay, David Davis. Already, again, the fact that it wasn't a fake name, the fact that that wasn't an identity that was stolen, it's like, what are the chances of that? The fact that he was trying to hide money from his wife, well, we know even more so why now that we know the full story. But at that time, I was just like, what a deadbeat dad. Little did I know he was potentially in a relationship with his own daughter. Speculating. Wow. Now, the fact that he gave Elaine and the real Ronald tickets to Canada and that they flew into Calgary in the winter, I feel like there's almost nowhere worse. Like I understand the North certainly, but like yeah, of course it would make more sense to go to Vancouver at that time of year. It's going
Yeah.
to be not as cold, all of the above. But
Prairie's weren't the
also,
choice, not in winter.
yeah, and I this is no shade to Calgary, but I'm just like it's just interesting to me. It was like, well, did the real Ronald have like an affinity for Calgary? Like, I guess for me, I'm just like, why Calgary? Like, why? Not that it's, listen, there's lots of places that are just as bad during the winter, but I don't know. It was just like, it's just wouldn't be the top of mind. You think about people from other
Sure.
places and it's like Vancouver, Toronto, Montreal. These would be the cities I would
Sure.
just think of first. Calgary, it's just like, interesting choice, I guess.
Freezing,
Freezing. Yeah, yeah. Yeah.
especially for people who are not used to it.
Yeah.
It's just such a
Wild.
wild choice, but it's also insane to me to be like, I need to get rid of these people. I'm just going to send them to Canada and hope for the best. Like, I'm shocked that he gave her the two-way ticket.
Well, and it's such a bold move because he was wanted back in Canada.
Yeah,
Not that it was necessarily going to come back to him because he was using a different name, but it just feels like classic, like true narcissist behavior, where it's like he's above
sure.
the law, he's smarter than everybody, like all of those themes. Seems to be quite the case for Albert. Uh the fact that he claimed his first wife was controlling and not attractive enough for him, so then
Mm,
he married a new woman who was
yeah.
attractive enough for him, who
Was his child?
was his daughter. I
Yeah.
just want to barf in my own mouth. Um, I also love that we started using the name Fake Ronald. It was helpful. Uh,
I thought it might be because I was like, even I'm getting confused now of what we're calling people, and I didn't want to have any of the things that he did pretending to be Ronald come across as sounding like Ronald may have done
of
them.
course. No,
So I
no, I
was like,
appreciate
we're
that.
just gonna have to keep adding fake in there because this is getting intense.
Yeah, it
One
was
name change is enough. Name
exactly.
changes like, ugh.
The fact that he was said to have massive mood swings at work, I feel like there is perhaps another mental health situation happening here. Like I think that he sounds like a narcissist, but it also sounds to me like, is it possible he was bipolar? Is there something else happening? Because again, just sounds like there could be a couple of things happening at the same time. The fact that they were arrested Noelle, his young wife daughter, and she was found stuffing money and gold bars in a bag, and this is not, I'm not coming for her in any way, but quite the opposite. I'm just like this poor woman. Like when I heard that the first time, not knowing this detail yet that she was actually his daughter, I was like, oh, is she in on this scam? She likely is. If she says she's not, it's probably a lie to protect herself, which I completely understand. But now I'm like, oh, this woman was completely brainwashed. Like this victim, she was a child who was
Yep.
essentially trafficked, for lack of a better term, to another country where she potentially had children with her father. And even if he didn't father those children, I would go so far as to say I think it's still extremely damaging to force your daughter to pretend to be your wife.
Yeah.
And obviously, she knew to some extent they were doing something wrong if she was stuffing cash and gold bars into a bag. That says to me that she was trying to protect him, or at least knew some level of what was happening, even though she denied it later. And again, I say this with no judgment towards her. I say it with, if anything, compassion, that I'm like, this poor woman, this who was a child and
Yeah.
obviously had something extremely traumatic happen to her. Whether or not she looks at it that way, my 2 cents. Um, the fact that the Interpol match comes back and he is number 4 at the time on the most wanted list. I mean, also kudos to Canada for making the top 4 of most wanted criminals. I feel like we produce a lot of serial killers and apparently a lot of top 4 criminals. Not a lot, but you know what I mean.
I love
Um,
that. I thought you were gonna go with like we produce like a lot of, like I don't know, singers, actors, hockey players, but yeah, I love you went with serial killers
well,
first.
we do. I think per capita we do.
Oh, I
We
don't
do.
like that.
Well, it's probably statistically not as as many as it seems, but I think it's just, well, it goes against our no our reputation for being kind. Um
Fair enough.
anytime I hear the word Waterloo, You know exactly what goes through my head. Waterloo every time.
100%.
Yeah.
Can you believe that was Eurovision?
Waterloo was?
That's how ABBA became ABBA.
I had no idea.
Waterloo is what they was the selection they came out with. Fucking knocked it out of the park, and then they became worldwide sensations.
So they obviously won that
They
year.
won with that, yeah.
That makes sense. It's a
Yeah.
good song.
It's I no, I was going to use so much young slang that's not really young slang. It's great.
Yeah.
I'm just going to go safe and say it's great. Oh, it's solid. I had no idea for years that that was anything involved in Eurovision. But I'm like,
Mm.
that makes sense.
Yeah,
That's where it all started.
totally makes sense. The fact that Albert thought he was too good for Zellers.
Oh, get fucked, sir.
Sir, you can keep my former place of employment and the former place of employment of a little gentleman we all know as Zeddy out of
Oh,
your damn mouth. How dare you? How dare you?
to
This
be
is like,
fair, I don't think he also worked in the shoe department, but agreed.
well, yeah, I guess. Well, guess what? I wasn't too good for it. Neither should this loser. Kill me.
It's insane to me that he's like, oh, this is beneath me.
Well, first of all, I don't think
It's
any
like,
job is beneath
what?
anybody. That's just
No.
that's a fallacy. Second of all, I want to make it very clear. Like I said earlier, there are different kinds of pickles that represent different kinds of occupations. I love them all equally, like without question. I'm just saying that there's different types, just like there's different types of jobs.
Yeah.
My point is,
It's wild to say that any job is beneath him, and it's also wild to say like his wife is beneath him.
oh, it's disgusting. Again, it feeds into his like pure true narcissism, and he can get bent, to use your term. Um, the fact also that his business was built on Barbara. It was Barbara. She was the brains. She knew the numbers. They built this entire empire on her. And
Yeah.
then he treats her that way. He cheats on her. He tries to ruin her life. He's physically abusive. Obviously, I think I can safely say mentally, emotionally, verbally abusive, also likely.
Yeah.
Um, the fact that he then took one of their children and went to another country and pretended it was his wife. He had half naked photos of her he was showing people. Like,
Hmm.
disgusting.
Horror
And
show.
again, all just taking advantage of Barbara and her skills and brain that were enabling them to even have that business. The fact
Yeah.
that he was using that business to like take people's personal information to defraud them, like so disgusting. Because again,
Yeah.
she wanted to make, I'm assuming, a reputable business based on her skill set, which she did. It got wildly successful and he ruined it. And that enrages me.
Hmm.
I also don't understand how the judge could ever have awarded two of the kids to him. And may that judge
Oh,
have to live with that decision, knowing that he then took one of those children out of the country and forced her to pretend to be his wife, or perhaps potentially forced her to live as his wife. Disgusting. And the blood is on that fucking judge's hands. Why on
100%.
earth? This man was completely unhinged, had shown signs of kidnapping, being aggressive, being physically violent, all of these things, and you reward him? Disgusting.
It's horrific.
Absolutely horrific. The fact that he took David Davis's birth certificate as collateral for the loan and then just kept it is chilling to me. Um, the fact that he could have gotten away with it forever, basically did, so scary. Um,
If they didn't have his fingerprints, they wouldn't have known who he was. But also, if it wasn't for that fucking watch, they may never have identified who
right.
Ronald was, so that he would have lived as Ronald for who knows how long.
Yeah. I just kept writing down barf, 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 barf about all the stuff with his daughter. Barf, barf,
Oh,
barf.
it's awful. Yeah.
You know, here's the last thing I want to say. Two things. One, you said something about how he would never financially recover from this, and that made
Yeah.
me think of Tiger King, which is one of my favorite moments in that whole thing. Anyway,
Yeah.
um, I love that again, it's like he's getting let out to go to church. He's being let out to go to this church program. My blood starts to boil because as you know, we've talked about it a lot on this show. It's like it's also like Epstein. When Epstein was in jail, he was like he just had to go at night. He was able
Oh,
to go
I
out and
know.
do whatever he wanted
Oh,
in a day. I'm like, how is that anyway? But on the flip, because it's we have to call out the goodness when the good things happen because it's rare. God bless them for denying him parole. Because
100%.
how many times on this show do we talk about somebody being put in prison for a violent crime and then they get out early or they get out at all and then they immediately do it again? I think what's
Yep.
sad is that this was essentially financial crimes and they were too worried about him. Now, granted, I understand those affect other people if he's frauding people. They are trying to
Sure.
protect people. Don't get me wrong. It's just sad to me that it's like fraud charges. They're so worried about him recommitting. They're willing to keep him in jail with no parole. But oftentimes on this show, we have heard about people doing time for violent sexual assaults, physical assaults, murders. I'll say it, often of women, and
Yep.
they end up getting out and almost immediately reoffending so often. We talk about it so often on the show. It's like if they had just kept this person in jail, he never would have had the chance to kill XYZ, to assault XYZ. And it's one of the like it's one of the things that makes my blood boil the most doing this show. So I say kudos to them for keeping him in prison, knowing that he would likely reoffend, and also how sad that it has to be a financial crime for it to be given that kind of weight because it's just rare to hear.
100%.
And I know that he was also in there, obviously, for murder. Don't get me wrong, but I
Yes.
just feel like it's like, I don't think that they thought he would easily reoffend as a murderer. The
No.
impression I got was that it was like he's going to reoffend as a fraudster, is
100%.
my personal, the way
That's
I interpreted it. And
Oh, that's how I absolutely did as well.
yeah,
For sure.
yeah. Because he was, listen, yes, he was a killer. Don't get me wrong. We know he murdered the real Ronald, obviously, but in a sense, it feels like he was only doing it to try and protect his financial crimes. Like he wasn't, he didn't, that we know of, have a string of like serial killer moments, right? Like it's not like it was like he got a
Right.
taste for killing and then started killing. It's like it felt like the killing for him was like a means to allow him to continue his life of crime. I'm not justifying it with that at all. I'm merely saying I don't know that there was. It's possible he would kill again, but I think it would have to be again to protect himself, to steal an identity, or to do something to allow himself to get more money. It doesn't seem like he was a killer who loved to kill. Was my point.
Oh, yeah. I'm actually shocked he didn't try and kill Ronald and Elaine instead of sending them to Canada. I
It
thought,
is
like,
interesting.
in the end, when he ended up actually killing Ronald, I was like, I actually thought he was going to try. And I mean, thank God he didn't. But I thought he would have tried to kill them both. But it's like, oh, it would be easier if they just went to Canada and that's it. But it's shocking to me that he then like stayed in contact with them,
It's
especially
bold.
if that was the plan, was to get rid of them.
Yeah.
It just feels weird to me. Also, I found a photo of him um at the wedding, at the Elaine's sister's wedding with Elaine.
Really?
Yeah. And so I'm like, wait, why was he even there?
See, I was also waiting for part of this to be like Elaine goes back to the UK, real Ronald stays in Canada, and then David Davis makes a move on Elaine. I was waiting for that to happen.
Oh, sure.
But little did I know it wasn't as innocent as him trying to steal this guy's girlfriend. He was trying to steal his entire life. So,
Yeah. Yeah. I just also really love him using the excuse of, we're such good friends, Ronald, let me use his identity. It's like, in
oh,
what scenario would he ever go, yeah, it's okay, you can use it? I'm not using it. It's like,
yeah,
what?
come
No.
on.
Yeah.
Come on. Well, and the whole thing where it was like we were best friends. He just attacked me on the boat and fell overboard. To your point, it's like, oh, he fell into the anchor that attached itself to his clothing, like,
Hmm.
and had a gash on his head. Yeah, sounds likely. Sounds like he absolutely accidentally killed himself. Give me a break. Give me a break.
Also, we are such good friends. He is my best friend. He attacked me. I thought you were best friends.
Yeah, exactly.
What's he attacking you over?
He
I
would have
thought
been,
he was okay with you using his identity. What was he mad about?
yeah. The
And then
the
you just
problem
left him there? Get
I
out.
know. The problem was the anchor.
Yeah.
That's like dead giveaway. Like, what are you doing? Like,
Hmm.
there's no way. As soon as you get caught, you can't argue anything. If
Yeah.
it had just been that he had the head injury and he had drowned, maybe you could get away with it. But obviously, there was no way to guarantee that he would die that way. He should have
Y-
just admitted it. He should have just pled guilty and tried to get a lesser sentence. Like, you're hooped at that point. You've attached
Yeah.
an anchor to somebody. Like,
He did. Yeah.
it's
Oh,
over, man. Like,
it's,
either blame somebody else or just own it, because there's no way. But again, it's that pure narcissism, that the belief that
yeah.
it's like, I can get out of this. I'm smarter than this. I don't need a lawyer or whatever, like I can beat this. They'll
Well,
believe me. I can trick them. And it's like, actually, you really can't.
I can't believe that he didn't try and go, well, the real David Davis found me and went after, mistook Ron for me and killed him. Like, I
Right.
can't believe he didn't try that and be like, he had the motive. He thought that was me.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, right, the most handsome man in the world, right? Get out.
Get
He's
out of
also
here.
like, not like, I was gonna say, like, he's no somebody and say like a super hot male celebrity. And my brain was like, who do we got? Who do we got? Tom Selleck was the only thing.
Well, you're speaking my language.
It was the first one that came to mind. And I'm like, yeah, no, I'll stand by it. I stand by it.
Listen,
Tom
Magnum, you never have
Selleck
to sell me.
in his prime.
You never have to sell me. Now, listen, before we wrap this up, I just need to actually circle back to something which we don't normally do on this show, but I just wanted you to know that
Yeah.
during the record, before this final bit, we take a little break. And I took a little
Yeah.
bit longer than maybe I normally did. And the reason I did that was because I was ordering you the stamp kit. So it's on its way to you. It's been ordered. And I've included 3 extra rubber sheets.
You did not.
Yeah. So
Well, now I
anytime.
have to film it. And it's all because I sent you that link so you knew exactly what I was talking about.
Yeah, so I just went to her profile. I went to
Of
her
course you
store.
did.
Click, click, wham, bam. Thank you, ma'am. It's on its way
Oh
to you.
my God. Well, thank you. That is incredibly sweet. But now it's like, are we just gonna, is it gonna be like a last call and you're just gonna sit and watch me?
It it would be my honor to sit and
Oh,
watch you carve that rubber.
I
That's
see,
one of the
now I
most
need a wraparound porch because
that's
instead
the
of
most
whittling
Canadian
wood, I'm
I've
gonna
said.
sit and,
Carve that rubber is probably the most Canadian I've sounded since Harbor, David Harbor in the
oh,
Harbor.
what if
But
I carve rubber in the harbor?
you're gonna carve a harbor. But listen, I like that you want a creative outlet, and I'm happy to try and facilitate that for you. Whether and now you're in it. And here's the other thing: it's a gift. So if it doesn't take, if you don't take to it, no harm, no foul. No
I
harm, no
hope you're
foul.
keeping the receipt for tax purposes.
Listen, you haven't let it go. You sent me a follow-up
I really
video.
did.
I feel your energy about it. I want this for you.
She just seems so nice and calm. And just the way she like, just the way that tool like carves through it like butter, like there's something appealing to it. And I am concerned. Like, you know how many stamps you're going to be sent.
Yeah. Well, listen, again, I got you 3 extra rubber sheets, so
That
it's
is,
the
yeah.
most I could add on. So there you go. But listen, dear listeners, thank you for coming with us on this wild ride. What a hoot and a half. If you haven't already, give us a follow on the socials on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube at True Crime and Cocktails, on Patreon at patreon.com/True Crime and Cocktails to learn more about our subscription-based service over there. And of course, the only place for official True Crime and Cocktails merch is, of course, truecrewmerch.com. So check that out as well if you're interested. And hey, in 2 days ish, on May 1st, I'm doing my concert in Hamilton. There are a few tickets left. So make sure you get a ticket, come out, have a party with us. It's going to be so much fun, and I cannot wait to see you there. Christy, do you want to tell the people about next week's episode?
On the next True Crime and Cocktails, Malcolm and Eleanor Graham.
No idea who those yahoos are and can't wait to find out about it. Christy, do you want to say goodnight to the people?
Oh, good night, Zeddy.
Oh, yeah. Good night, Zeddy.